Welcome to episode 84 of the High Volume Hiring Podcast. I am one of your two co-hosts. I'm Stephen Rothberg. I'm the founder of College Recruiter Job Search Site, where we believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career, and it should be easy and inexpensive for employers to hire them. And if you notice that I slowed down there, it was deliberate. I realized I was talking very fast, and I was talking very fast because I'm really excited about the topic that Jeanette and I are going to be talking about today. But Jeanette,
Yes.
before we get into that, tell people who the heck you are for those who haven't
So for
listened to us
those who
before.
do not know, I am not Wonder Woman. I see my head is actually perfectly positioned for those who are actually looking at the video. I'm Jeanette Leeds. I'm an HR tech entrepreneur and leader and AI evangelist in the space. And we today are going to be talking about AI and applications, and are all of them equal? Is this good? Is this bad for employer? Like, this is a trend and discuss hot topic. So we wanted to do a special episode on this topic today.
Cool. So solve everything in 10 seconds. What are your thoughts?
Well, like everything else in life, it's not a black or white answer.
Yeah.
So the answer is, it's like, it depends, right? There's some that I think are really good and some that are not so hot. So
Yeah.
yeah, so let's dive into that.
Yeah. So in the green room, as anybody who's ever been on TV, radio, podcast, or whatever, understands the green room thing. It just means that you just haven't hit the record button yet. So in our green room, when you and I were talking before, we were talking about there being like a spectrum, right? And so I think at like one end of the spectrum in my mind would be AI assisted assistance, like think Grammarly, spell check. Like I don't think any employer would care if Jeanette, you're applying to work as a salesperson, an electrical engineer, an auto mechanic, whatever, that you used Grammarly to make sure that you didn't have run-on sentences, that you use spell check, an auto-complete kind of thing like that, right? That's one end of the
Right.
spectrum.
Yep.
To me, the other end of the spectrum is, and cover the ears of you youngsters out there, but the total shit products like Lazy Apply. Like, here's my resume or CV, here's $20, send out my application to 1,000 employers. I don't even know that I'm applying to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Again, things like those sort of companies, it's this, I call it what, spray and pray, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're applying to whatever salesperson role, and really maybe what you're looking for is a retail salesperson type of role at a store. And these things are just sending out your resume to all sorts of, maybe it's a tech company. It's just these inappropriate, unintended kind of applications versus what you were saying, like a Grammarly, or even, hey, I need something to help me, make sure my cover letter, if you're, I don't know how many people are using cover letters today, but like,
Mhm.
or let me edit my resume a bit to make sure it highlights my experience to the actual job. Like that, that's a nice to have. That's a nice, that's okay. Let me use that to assist me. Let me
Yeah.
use it as a tool versus like, I don't even know what's happening here.
Yeah, it's like, so when I was a teenager and I have 3 older sisters, if I was applying to a job, I could show my application to one of my older sisters. What do
Yes.
you think? In addition to making fun of me for any number of reasons, they probably gave me some good advice, and so that was great.
Right.
So I don't think that the vast majority of employers have any problems with that. Right? It's like we would
And
expect you to be using spell check when you're
exactly.
sending emails on
So
our
this is,
behalf, when you're writing a document. Right, that's good.
yeah,
The other end, where the candidate doesn't even know they're applying to a job, I can't think of any employer that would want that.
right. And it's interesting because I was talking to someone, I guess it was last week, and they were saying, like, their recruiters are calling up, actually calling up, and I assume emailing, reaching out, connecting with candidates who don't even know that they've applied to the jobs, not interested. So you're talking about, like, it's an interesting, like, where is the, good use of time?
Yeah.
It's like, and then presumably if they're paying for it, I mean, that's where, it's an issue.
And
It's an
and
issue.
and I'm glad that you mentioned the "I didn't even know I applied" scenario, because I hear that too from some of our customers, and I hear that going to conferences. I see that on LinkedIn, like, every single day. Employers are complaining about this. They're right to complain about this. It's a waste of time. I'm not at all convinced that this is AI. I think it's just as likely that this is a symptom of, in a lot of cases, hourly employees, high volume roles,
Mhm.
where the employee, it's like, it's Monday. I need to find a new job. I'm going to go to ZipRecruiter, Indeed, whatever my favorite job board is. I'm going to apply to several dozen. And then I'm going to sit back and wait to hear from those employers. And oh, by the way, when I apply to them, I'm going to use one click apply. I already
Mhm.
have my resume on Zip, Indeed,
Yes.
LinkedIn, whatever. Apply, 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 apply. And then 3 days later or 3 weeks later,
Right.
the employer gets back to you. And the reality is, of course, you don't remember.
That I mean, that's true too. So it's like this symptomatic issue. I mean, it's also really interesting. I was reading, I think it was Ashby that just came out. I think it was maybe it was last month. What month are we in? It's February, right? Um, where they have a talent trends and they were able to analyze all of their ATS data, and it has where like the number of applications has gone up in the past like year, like number of
Yeah.
applications per job, like I think it's like
Yeah.
3 or 4 times the amount, right? And so that makes sense, right? It's AI generated, like auto apply, it's this easy apply, it's a whole variety of reasons.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tease it out, but I mean, it's a
So
high volume.
So when you and I first crossed paths, you were on the talent acquisition side of the table, not the vendor side of the table. Um, if you were on the talent acquisition side today and needing to hire, 100 people for a warehouse, call center, restaurants, whatever, and you were getting in all of these applications, how would you even know which ones are AI and which ones are because you chose to have a one-click apply.
Right.
Yet you could also choose not to,
Well, see,
right?
I think that's what's interesting. Right now, I haven't heard anyone like, how do you know? Like, how do you know is it human? Right? Was it a
Mhm.
human? Was it AI? Who was it? I mean, it's I think it's really difficult. I mean, I was hearing some, stories of, forget about even like AI generated, but like even bad actors, right? Or bad
Yes.
country, like corporate espionage kinds of like, okay, is this a Netflix movie that's like coming to life where it's, and I don't even want to say any names of countries, but maybe some countries, but like
Mhm.
what's happening. And they're like, okay, we want to get people hired in to whatever, company to get information out or plant bad things into the system. And
It
so they're like, and this again, I was hearing the story. I'm like, this can't be real. And then dug
it
into it, like,
is.
oh my God, this is,
It
right?
corporate espionage for
Corporate, but
sure.
it's next level, right? And so you
Yeah.
have AI and like, let's figure out what the right profile is to get the interview or maybe get to the assessment level, which a lot of people, maybe it's programming, take a Python test, and you have one person who takes that or
Hmm.
whatever algorithm takes that test, right? Gets them through, then an interview, maybe it's virtual, cameras not work. And then all of a sudden, whoever shows up is not even that person or people that you interviewed, but you think it was one. And it's like this insanity. So, I mean, I think from an employer standpoint, from a trust and secure and all that, I mean, it's the world is changing really fast, whether it's from
Yeah.
that bad actor standpoint
Yep.
or just an individual or individuals trying to
Yeah. So I saw
crazy.
recently, so the bad actor,
A bad actor.
situation, right? It's one thing, as bad as it is for somebody to apply to your job by having their buddy take the assessment, right? That to me reminds me of back in like 1863 when I was taking SATs. Lincoln was still president. It was that era. Um, when you walked into the SAT exam room or ACT or whatever you're taking, you had to show some kind of photo ID.
Yeah.
There was a validation that you were who you said you were. But the reality was, even if you paid somebody like in Suits, the TV show Shoots, even
Yes.
if you paid, Michael to go in and take the exam for you,
Right.
it wasn't that you were trying to infiltrate, PwC or EY or Amazon or whatever the employer
Right.
was to do harm to them. You
Mhm.
were just trying to make a living. Is
Yeah,
like that's
and
that's
you're
one
trying to
thing.
or the kid paying for it or parents paying it, just trying to
Right.
get into Harvard or
But
whatnot. Yeah, it
if
wasn't
you're
malicious.
right, if you're like employed by the government of North Korea to infiltrate a defense contractor, that's a different thing.
That is a
And
different
if you're part of an organized crime syndicate that's applying to be a bookkeeper for some company so that you can get access to their bank account,
Mhm.
that's also a bad thing. By the way, we think about a year ago that happened to us at College Recruiter. We interviewed someone and there were just some red flags. Never extended an offer. They weren't hired. They didn't have access to our systems, but we certainly wasted a couple of hours
Yeah.
emailing, talking. It was
Wow.
weird. Um, there was a lot of things that were like, wow, is she awesome? And there were other things like her street address was not correct. It
Interesting.
was like instead of like First Street North, it was like First Lane North,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. That doesn't quite match up. But I think every employer would agree those sorts of bad actors, there's never a time where you want to hire them. There's probably never a time that you want to hire somebody with a lazy apply. How do you identify them? I did see online, I think it was on LinkedIn, an employer shared like a screenshot
Yeah.
of applications, first name field, last name field, email address field. And you could tell just by looking at that a lot of them were bogus. Cindy
Interesting.
Jones, but
Right.
the email address was like xr4ti at
It wasn't like
gmail.com.
Cindy Jones 25 at
Right.
yeah, at Gmail.
Right. Or
I don't know if
even,
there is a Cindy Jones at Gmail,
yeah.
but
And it
sorry.
was just like application after
Yeah,
application, and they were all like 2 minutes
very
apart.
obvious from that
And
standpoint.
and the resumes all started off, it was obvious that AI had a field day. Again,
Mm,
employers, when they see that, I think they can see at a glance that it's bad,
yeah,
that these are AI generated, not AI assisted. Um,
right.
the I think it's EY has at least last year they went to a system where when candidates showed up for their assessments, they were in person, they had to show ID, which reminds me of the
Mm.
SAT. You can't really scale that though.
Wait, how do you scale that, right? We're high volume, all of a sudden, you wanna hire hundreds of thousands, assuming also you're flying people in, driving people in,
Yeah.
like, how do you get people, again, depending on where they're coming around, like, that is interesting. I have, it reminds me, there was one, client that I worked with a couple years ago. I don't know if I can say who, so I won't say exactly who it was, but they actually did
Acme Incorporated,
Acme
the same
Incorporated.
company that Wiley E. Coyote spends his money with.
Exactly. And what they actually were doing,
Yeah.
was doing an interview, background check, everything all in one go, like almost like a career fair. You show up,
Okay.
and it was just they had everything set up where you would walk out with an offer, but it was
In person.
in person. Everything was from like fill out that, applicant, granted, it wasn't like paper application, but fill it
Uh-huh.
out,
Yeah.
great. You pass some checks. And if you do great, go over there. Now you have this, extra thing that you have to do. Great. Now you're good. Go to this next booth, almost like and so, in person, assuming that person, I mean, is a person that shows up a few days later, which is interesting. But that is,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a, and we were talking about this, it's a bit of an arms race, right, between the
Yes.
candidate and employer, which is happening here. So I think it'll be really interesting how this starts to shake out. I was not, normally we'd say, oh, in the next year, 2, 3, 5 years. I think this is even in the next 6 months, right? Everything is evolving so quickly. And how does everyone on both ends, right? Like an employer and a candidate, really harness the power of AI in a way that helps, that doesn't harm, like
Yeah.
both sides. Because ultimately, I think in the end, you know, there's kind of who want jobs, employers want to hire. It's like finding that right match, making this all work. And it's just,
Without, well, feel free to name names if you wish. Um, you're not shy, I'm not shy. That's why these conversations are so fun. But are there any solutions out there that you've seen that allow candidates to apply online and for the employer to be able to validate that this is a real person? Like, is there stuff out
it's
there
interesting.
that you've seen? It's like that more employers should be doing that.
Right. Right. Oh, it's interesting. I haven't seen anyone, at least that hasn't like launched, that's starting to like really tackle that
Okay.
per se. I'm just thinking, I think it's like because I'd say we're early days, right? We're seeing the
Yeah.
rise of the lazy applies.
Yeah.
I am hearing some tech vendors that are like starting to think about, okay, some of this fraud, right?
Yeah.
Like again, from a fraud standpoint, okay, is it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a variety of different ways to tackle that. It's just a
So
matter of time.
yeah, speaking of time, we're almost out, but
Oh my
I'll
god.
give you, I know, right? It just flew by.
I
I'll
know.
give you one that I think is
Yeah,
really
please do.
promising, and I think we're gonna see a lot more of it. So, I think it was maybe last spring or summer, LinkedIn introduced their, I can't remember what they call it, but basically they partnered with Clear. And you upload a copy of your driver's license, your
Mhm.
passport, something like that, and then LinkedIn, through this partnership, validates that you are who you say you are.
Ooh,
You
that's
get a nice
interesting.
little badge on your profile, which I assume they probably then also trust your content
Right.
more than others, so more
Oh,
people are
that
gonna
is
see your
interesting.
posts, and if you apply to a job on LinkedIn, the employer likely sees that LinkedIn has
You are
validated that
who.
this is a real person, that this person is who she says she is. Um, I could see
Mm,
ATS and chatbots, anything that is kind of managing those employment records where whether it's iSIMs or smart recruiters or whatever, Fountain, if they built something
right,
like that into their system so that no matter what the source was, all of their applicants have to upload that kind of ID,
right. Well, which
then
is interesting.
I
Like, it's
I think
that
that
is
has promise.
interesting. It does. On the flip side, if we think of, like, privacy, right? You're applying for a
Hmm,
job, like, I'm about to give you all my information, right? Like, my driver's license. Hell no. You wanna steal my identity? Am I sure you're this right company? Like, I mean,
oh,
it's interesting.
that's
It's this trust, right, on both ends of, like, I'll tell you who you are, but, like, are you about to take my stuff too? Like,
that's a
it's interesting. It's really tricky.
that's a really good point. So I would have more
Yeah.
trust within Clear
Mhm.
than I would in LinkedIn. Not that I distrust LinkedIn, but
Right,
LinkedIn is not built to
right.
right from the ground up to sort of secure those sorts of documents like Clear is.
Mhm. True,
And then
true.
another step removed would be a large employer, Fortune
Mhm.
1000 government agency. I think I would trust LinkedIn more than the employer. And
Interesting.
then a small employer, the mom and pop pizza shop that has no real systems. You know,
Right.
you walk past the counter into the back room, there are
Yeah,
paper files in there with social
exactly.
security numbers, credit card
Right,
receipts, right? That for sure. I don't want them having my
right.
passport, essentially. Um, well, I guess for high volume employers, the good news is they kind of have an inherent advantage then over these small employers.
I mean, it's true. If you have a brand name and you're known,
You're trusted.
it's more trustworthy for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
So so I think that
Interesting.
drop a comment for the
Yeah, let us know
listeners.
what you guys think.
Let us know which of the two of us you would trust more with your documents. And
Jeanette or Steven?
I think we both know it's her.
I have a secure, fireproof filing cabinet right here next to
Uh-huh.
me, so we're good.
And you also have a bridge in Brooklyn that you would like to sell
I
us. But
do.
that's yeah,
I
yeah.
do. Actually, I do.
Jeanette,
Awesome.
this has been
Same.
fun.
Always
But
fun.
yeah, employers, ATS folks, whatever, put your ideas in. This
Yeah,
is definitely to me, this is like a rising tide lifts all ships.
exactly. Evolving area. We will see.
All
On that
right.
note, until next time.
Cheers, Jeanette.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Steve.